Hello. Hi. I'm just gonna give it a moment if anyone's joining, since we will record this, so I'm just gonna give it a second. Okay, I'm gonna dive in to our Instagram Live today. This is our first Instagram Live event that we've done. Welcome. We're going to host a Q&A today with one of the clinicians from our Access Open Minds Eskasoni site, Tess Kerrigan, and so Tess will join me in a little bit, but I'll just kick us off a little and introduce the chat. So I'm Alyssa Frampton, and I'm a member of the Access Open Minds National Youth Council. I've been a part of the Access Open Minds project for since the very beginning, so it's really means a lot to me, and I'm super excited to be moderating this chat with Tess. We're just going to kind of have a bit of a chat about youth mental health, and you're welcome to ask any questions. So if you put questions into the comment section here at Instagram, I'll answer those. I'll ask those questions to Tess, and if we happen to run out of time, I will collect those questions. We do have some questions that folks have sent in over Instagram in the last little bit, so I will also ask those questions, which I've kind of compiled. And as I said, Tess will join in a few moments, but I thought I would just kick us off by talking a little bit about why we're doing this Instagram Live today. So today is considered Blue Monday, and whether or not you believe in that, since there's no data to back it up, it is considered the saddest day or the most depressing day of the year for many. It's, if you look it up online, people will say that, it's after the holidays, we're all kind of poor, we're all kind of tired, things are just happening, and usually we start setting in that we have new bills to pay and all these new things happening around this time. So no data to back it, but many people say it's a rough day. And we think that even if you don't necessarily believe in Blue Monday, you probably care about youth mental health either way. So it's always a good day to talk about youth mental health, whether or not there's a reason, like a day or not. It's always a great opportunity to have this conversation. So especially during, I guess, COVID-19, we thought it was really important to try to answer some questions that folks had and try to talk a little bit more about youth mental health. As we know, youth have been really affected by this pandemic. So a recent survey, for instance, that came out from Kids Help Phone, or recent data rather that came out from Kids Help Phone, said that 4.2 million calls came in this year across Canada from children and youth versus only 1.8 million calls in 2019. So 2020 saw, 4 times the amount of calls coming in from young people, which is just one bit of data that we have to kind of say that young people are feeling really the impacts of this pandemic on their mental health. Additionally, in September, a youth study was done in Alberta where 68% of young people under the age of 25, or 65% rather, under the age of 25, said they identified as potentially having a generalized anxiety disorder, where in comparison to only 23% of those who were adults saying that they identified as maybe having some anxiety over this pandemic. So even those types of self-reporting and young people generally, saying that they're feeling a little more of the mental health impacts of COVID, and as we know, school shifts and everything like that. School shifts and everything like that have been major impacts. So it's really important to have these conversations and to talk about what resources exist. So I'm going to, with that, pull Tess in so that Tess can answer some of those questions around, how do we deal with mental health during the pandemic for young people, and what are some of the services that are available? Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. So I'm just going to click now. Bear with me. It is our first live, so I'm sending. We'll see how this happens. Hey, Tess.
Hey, Alyssa. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Good. Hello,
Um,
everyone.
I'm going to pass it over to you, Tess, to just introduce yourself, and then I'll ask you to start with our first question, sort of thing.
Sure. Yeah. So my name is Tess Kerrigan, and I'm an Access Open Minds clinician at the Eskasoni site, and that's in Cape Breton. I've been working there for almost 3 years now. Hey, Chloe. And yeah, so I have a social work degree, so that's kind of my schooling background. But yeah, I've been working in the community at the Access Youth Space, and I love working there. Um, it's been definitely a different year, as Alyssa said. 2020 was a little more difficult, so I'm really excited to be here tonight and to, share some of my thoughts.
Thanks, Tess. I guess one of the first things you just mentioned, 2020 has been a big year. Um, would you like to share some of the things that have changed in your community for how youth have been able to seek and be offered services? I think that's probably a good place to start with some of those adaptations we saw.
Yeah, no, for sure. Okay. So within Eskasoni, there has been a lot of changes in how services are provided. So in terms of mental health services, so individual counseling with therapists, we've switched to online, phone, or video counseling. And it's definitely been an adjustment for some people. But we've also noticed that it also brought up a new kind of accessibility where some people might not have been able to attend sessions in person. They're really kind of enjoying the phone sessions. It's been a mix of kind of difficult and good positive things. We're kind of just making our way through. We are also offering emergency appointments if there's something critical enough going on that requires an emergency in-person appointment. That's something we are able to do. And within Eskasoni, we also have a crisis center, which is open 24/7. They offer phone services, but they're also open for emergency drop-in services as well. But also within our mental health services, we have the Access Youth Space, where we have programs that go on for youth, typically in person every day. With the beginning of the pandemic, our youth team had to switch to completely virtual programs. So that brought a lot of challenges, but some new experiences too. And we were trying to engage youth virtually as best as they could. They did a really, really great job of it. And now we're seeing that programs are able to start up in person again with limited numbers. So we have to be careful and follow the COVID guidelines, of course. But we are seeing programs pick up. It started in the summertime. They started programs again. So it's definitely been different, but we're adapting in Eskasoni and we're doing the best that we can.
Yeah, and I think everyone kind of, that shift from like online to trying to figure out like how can you even do this online? Like there's certain things you can do on Zoom, but there's other things that, there's limitations. And I know from just being able to have the opportunity to learn of the different things that Eskasoni is doing that, you're offering so many programs often in the space on a given and any given year that, I can't imagine that moving all those online was easy. But I guess I would love to hear, like, what are some of the examples of programs that you did move online, and maybe how did those go? And what are some examples of programs that you're offering now in person? Because I think those are really great to share and as examples of youth programming that does exist.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Alyssa. So, in terms of virtual programming, there was a few different things going on. The youth crew worked to do some online like baking classes. I know they did some like online like contests, like drawing contests and things like that. I can't speak to all the programs that the youth crew did put on, but I know there was a lot. And now in the youth space, what they're doing is they're basically taking all the programs that they did before, such as baking night, craft night, dream catcher making, gamer day is something that's still happening. We just have a limited number of spots, so I know the youth crew is trying to make it equal for each participant to get a chance to go. And the youth are definitely showing up, and I think that the programs are full every night that they offer them. They start, I think, on Wednesdays now until Sunday. So it's definitely cut back from before, but they are trying to roll out more programs each day. And I know with Christmas, they had specific programs for Christmas, like hot chocolate making and different things like that. So they were trying to gear them. So I'm sure they're getting ready for Valentine's Day now, Valentine's Day crafts and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think one of the like most unique things that I've always, thought was a highlight of Eskasoni is just how those youth programmings just get young people to the door for early intervention and early opportunities to have those conversations with, folks like yourself. And so it's great to hear that, that some of those were able to be adapted onto online, and now you're having to have those in person. So I guess that's kind of some of the fun stuff to talk about is like some of the programming, but some of the questions that did come in really focus on like, how do we support folks during this time? And I guess I really would love to hear your expertise, as a clinician on like some of those things of like, how do young people, how do caregivers and parents and also peers, I guess, support each other during COVID? And what are some, I guess, tips or things that you've seen and experienced that have been helpful for people to like give support? And before I turn it over to you, I'm just going to let everybody, some people have kind of joined our live. And so welcome to our first Instagram live. If you have any questions for Tess, please feel free to like write in the comments and I will make sure that we get those questions. But yeah, I'll just kind of kick back to you, Tess, as what I said, just what are some of the tips on, how can we support those around us during COVID-19 in a more general sense?
So that's a great question. I think generally it's important to be gentle on ourselves and to let everyone know that like this is something that we weren't prepared for, this pandemic. And I think that just maintaining connection with our friends, family, acquaintances is very important during this time, because people, as we know, have lost certain senses of connection, and we're kind of getting new ways to reconnect with people. So staying connected, checking in, making sure that people have what they need during this time if possible. And I think just if somebody does reach out, it's important to, if you're kind of in a place that has resources, it's nice to kind of be aware of what's available. So within Eskasoni, we tried to make it known that our services are here. We made some posts during like the big part of the pandemic where Eskasoni was actually on a lockdown, and we let everyone know that we were there for services and telehealth services, and just kind of making sure people know that we're there to support them. And I think I can only speak for Eskasoni, but within Eskasoni, there's been a lot of community support that's gone on during the pandemic. So, as challenging as the global pandemic is, there's also life that continues to go on, throughout that, and looking at, different things that have happened. It's important to maintain that connection with each other and offer that ongoing kind of support.
Mm-hmm. I think we've seen that like in a general sense across like access networks, just trying to still keep that connection and trying to make sure that there's a connection to community and letting like folks know like this is a service that's available. And I know even in Chatham-Kent, for instance, when they were having to pause some services, there was a lot of like just trying to find ways to keep connected with the community digitally and making sure that young people knew that there was like there was still that connection and that access still existed. And so I think being able to, like as you said, keep in touch with the community has been such an important part. And there's also been some really great like resources coming out for youth mental health. So I think like exactly what you said, like there's community-based resources, but there's been so many good resources online. Like I've been really shocked at like how quick so many folks adapted to build out like youth-specific mental health COVID resources. I know, we've shared some on our Access Open Minds Instagram and pages from folks like Jack.org and School Mental Health Ontario and those types of folks, because there's just so much. And a lot of those are really around, taking challenges for self-care. And even just like, I think I'm someone who has always kind of been hesitant around self-care because I'm always just like, it's community care. But I think we need a combo of both, especially in these times where it's exactly what you mentioned, Tess, being kind to ourselves, you know, and really making sure we're doing those check-ins with ourselves, and also being kind with our coworkers and all those. So I've been really grateful to have people at Access who've been like, you know, there for me during challenging times. So I think you're exactly right. It's community and checking in and all of those things. And um, yeah, I guess just kind of in the same note, have you, I'm not sure like how many young people went to online school in Eskasoni, but did you see any of your clients kind of facing that, and any different stressors from online school? And did you have any, like, I guess, advice on how to sort of manage that, since I know in Nova Scotia, we're maybe not doing that as much now, but across the country, there's still many kids doing just virtual school. So do you have any reflections on that at all, Tess?
Yeah, so virtual schooling is something that happened in Eskasoni, and it's still continuing. So right now,
Oh, okay.
the youth are going every other day to school, and then the other days they're doing online learning. So
Okay.
it's definitely been a new experience for a lot of people. I know I've spoken to a few people and also clients that are doing online school, and it's something new. So they're adjusting. A lot of the younger students, where their parents are kind of, or caregivers are kind of taking that teacher role, it's been a little bit challenging for that as well. And I kind of like to, like, when I speak to parents or when I speak to other people, I like to also reiterate that it's important to be gentle on yourself, because this is a very new experience. It's going to bring about, you know, new learning. Everybody has different learning styles, so it's important to kind of recognize that too. So the online platform might work for some, but it might not be the easiest for others. And so when I might have clients that are struggling with motivation to kind of get that work done, there's different things that work for different people, but sometimes having like a scheduled time when they're going to do school, instead of just picking when they can do it. Sometimes people do better with a routine. So that's one tip that some people find helpful. I guess it kind of just depends on each individual. So,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, and also people have been reaching out that might be struggling with online schooling. And that's something that like Access is here for as well. It's not just something to do with mental health. It could be anything, and online school has been a challenge for people. So, you know, kind of just getting some extra support with that is helpful too. And another tip too is reaching out to your teachers. I think if possible, reaching out to your teachers if you're having difficulty with it, looking for a little bit of extra help, that's okay. There's nothing to be ashamed of. We didn't prepare for this. We didn't expect to be doing online schooling, so a little extra help is okay.
I think that's such a great point, because I think, like, even just hearing from some folks who sent in questions, there was like, you know, how do I even tell that difference between having a mental health problem right now, maybe just like dealing with COVID, and this bringing up, you know, different feelings. I'm sorry, but there's also some children in the background, so you may hear them, because such as COVID, you have to just work in your spaces. And yeah, I think it's just bringing up those feelings of like, is this a COVID related feeling, or is this like, am I dealing with like a mental health issue? And I think even just what you're saying is like, you know, it's okay if you don't know, reach, and if you're feeling like you might need help, just reach out for help. And you know, Access is a service that's there for that. It is there for folks with you know, less serious problems, quote unquote. But you know, that's the point. And we talk a lot about, you know, early intervention, early identification, and that really means that, you know, if you have something that might seem like a small problem, it's great to try to address that, and seek out that help for it now before it maybe becomes a larger problem in your life. And I think right now, like, I know myself that just my normal mental health, when I would like, I'm someone who totally is affected by seasonal affective disorder, but I feel like it's just hit me in like a whole new way this year than it ever has, because of like this whole COVID thing. And I'm like super lucky to be in Newfoundland, where there's less restrictions right now, but even that alone is like, just the general knowledge that like this pandemic's happening has had like an impact. So I think that's like a great point. of like, how do we, like, you know, it's okay to just reach out for help, and Access is a place for that. I guess one of the other, like, in speaking about that, I mean, what would you say to someone, oh, sorry, I'm going to pause myself. We've got a question, which is for youth who don't know where to ask for help, where can they start? So if you were, if there was a young person, I mean, I guess Eskasoni, but in general, where might a young person start to look for help?
Yeah, so depending on where you're at, there's always different options within Eskasoni. Specifically, we can contact the crisis center, but usually if you talk to anybody who works within community, they know about mental health services, so there's someone who can set you up there with services. And I guess as far as things go anywhere, some people start with their family doctor. Depending on what services are available, where you're located, you can do a simple search online, sometimes is helpful without having to kind of go through talking to someone right away. Talking to somebody at a clinic or a nurse, really asking what's available within your community. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And if you're looking, I mean, I guess also just to plug, if you're wanting to know if there's an Access Open Minds site in your community, a way to look for that is just to, I mean, if you put Access Open Minds into Google, I'm sure it would find where a site would be, but also you could just go to accessopenminds.ca, and that would also help you be able to see if there is a site in your community. But I agree, Tess, like a lot of times resources are kind of online, and like you can kind of find some things online, and while it's not always really streamlined, usually if you reach out to one point, or if you start with one of those searches and try and reach out, it's like that's a good place to start. And it's just unfortunate that often we might get a roadblock, and that can be discouraging. I know that, you know, that's been discouraging for me in the past sometimes, but it's important to try to like keep that up. And I often find even just like telling one other person that I'm doing that helps me like be a little bit more accountable, and or like that person kind of checks in and is like, oh, did you find some help? Like, did you get that help? And sometimes I find that like helps me keep looking, or keep like have building momentum on like that search. So yeah, I totally agree. I think it's just been, like you said already, like such a different time, like, and I guess one of the other things that I just was kind of wondering is like, how do you think, or how have you seen, I guess, youth mental health in general being affected by COVID-19, or have you sort of seen, what are some of the key things that you've seen, or some of the issues that you've seen come out of the pandemic around youth mental health?
Yeah, yeah. So there has been a lot of different things come out of this, especially for youth, because youth are used to leaving their house. They're used to going to school, used to going to social events, and that was all kind of cut off, right? So
Mm-hmm.
we've seen a lot of challenges with, people feeling trapped. Some of the words that some of the youth used. Also, an increase in anxiety has definitely I've noticed within my own caseload, just surrounding the virus. And I think a lot of youth have a lot of access to social media, and different kind of platforms that talk about the virus a lot, and that's something that definitely increased the anxiety of some of the youth, just seeing that kind of COVID talk all the time. But yeah, I think just like changing in routines, changing of how life is, it definitely interrupted kind of how youth are functioning, and kind of, I think, an increase in also some depressive symptoms based on kind of not being able to socialize as much with friends. For some people, that was like their main coping skill, and interacting with people on FaceTime might not actually give the same effect as actually being in person with someone. So I've seen, a lot of youth that have had a really challenging time and had to really kind of work through it to kind of adjust to how things are in the world now. Also, mask wearing, that's something else that a lot of youth have been adapting to. It's definitely new. Wearing masks during class time, in public, if anybody might have some kind of like anxiety about that, and where their breathing might get shallow, sometimes that is also something difficult that the youth have been bringing up. So it's kind of just an adjustment and learning how to refocus in a society where it's not the same as it was before. And yeah, I've noticed that we actually have had an increase of referrals over the last year. That's been coming up. I think a lot of it was related to the pandemic, but also I think once services started, it might have been the pandemic that kind of led them to finally reach out for help. So as hard as it was and how difficult it was for youth, I think it also kind of encouraged people to reach out. I think they felt safer saying, okay, this is a pandemic, no one expected it, I'm going to reach out for help. But I think it might have been something that they wanted to do for a while, and this kind of just let them to do that.
Kind of like I don't know, like especially if you're dealing with like stigma of things, like I feel like there's been so much of that like breaking down, like it's kind of just like messages is like everyone's mental health is kind of crappy right now, and it doesn't like, and that's okay, and you can just speak out about that. And I think there's been a lot of folks talking more about their mental health, being affected in different ways like that. So I think you're exactly right that we've that maybe it's been like an opportunity to say, I'm experiencing troubles, but it's an easy way to just kind of say it's pandemic related, not just me, and then able to like access those resources. I guess pandemic specific, I know you mentioned you were doing, services online and then also those emergency in person. How did you face any young people who struggled with like privacy and trying to be able to have those sessions in a safe and like secure place? And what were some of the ways you maybe mitigated that or have been trying to deal with that with young people?
Yeah, that's a great question. I have seen that come up. There is one thing that I always do before a session. If my client has texting, and pretty much all of mine do, which is a really, really lucky thing, I text them before the appointment to make sure they're in a safe space and they're still okay to do the appointment, just to make sure they're alone and in a confidential area. I have had a few times where clients didn't know where was a safe space in their house, and then they decided to try and do the session in the car. So I have a lot of clients that do their appointments from the car. Some people with children, they're not able to, they don't want other people around or a lot of siblings. They will go and sit in the car. Some clients during the summer months when it was warmer, they would go for a walk and they would feel comfortable talking while they were walking. It's kind of been just an adjustment for my clients as well, as me, of knowing what to do before the session. So I've definitely thought about how I would feel if my counselor was calling me and I wasn't in a safe space. So I want to make sure that my clients are ready and okay to chat. And sometimes that means being 10, 15 minutes a little bit later for a session. And that was an adjustment at first, but it is something that is really important to consider. So yeah, if somebody's 10 minutes late because they're trying to get to a safe room in the house to have the appointment, that's okay. We've been working through those kind of challenges together, and yeah, it's been going okay so far.
That's awesome. And I think those are great like points to make. Like I have not heard anyone being like, just texting and giving that extra bit of time. I'm sure lots of people are doing it, but I'm really glad that, to hear that those are some of the ways that, being flexible. I think that was a key point that you just made. Like, I think that that's been a way that a lot of people have been able to, I guess, or have been needing to do in order to adjust for COVID-19 is really just being flexible with both ourselves, with each other, with how we do work, and patient also to figure out like how are we adjust. So I'm glad to hear though that you've been able to find some ways to like actually to mitigate those privacy concerns. I guess so. We kind of talked about like some of the big challenges that like young people saw were just kind of like general like anxiety things. beyond, I guess, like taking, like, I know I asked you for like tips on like kind of supporting each other during this time, but I'm wondering if you have any other tips, since we are also talking about Blue Monday, of like how to kind of keep your mood up or how to get through some of those, you know, more challenging times. Yeah. What do you think?
So just in general,
Yeah.
yeah, so it's probably a key word that everyone's been hearing a lot lately, but self-care. Um, Self-care is critical, but it doesn't always have to be a bubble bath or, going for a walk. Self-care can be anything that makes you feel good and that you can take time out of your day for yourself. So whether it be reading,
Yeah.
writing, maybe for some people working is self-care at times. It depends on what it is for you. So making a priority for yourself to realize that, yeah, it's okay to take this 5, 10 minutes, an hour, depending on how your schedule is, for yourself. And I think, like I said before, being gentle on yourself. This is something that, we couldn't have prepared for. So now that we're living in it, we're adjusting and we're finding out kind of, days might be a little bit longer, especially in the winter time. Kind of looking at what you can do to brighten up those days for yourself. So whether it be having a routine when you come home. So say you're at school or at work, you come home and you have, okay, every night at this time I'm going to watch my show, or something simple like that. It could be as simple as that. If you're finding that, maybe things feel a little bit too heavy, knowing that it's okay to reach out and to get a little bit of support. And like you said before, Access, really, really great resource. Obviously, I love Access. So looking at their website, looking where there is Access sites. And I guess also kind of connecting with friends, family.
Yeah.
Maintaining that connection. It can be hard some days. It can be really hard to, especially today, Blue Monday, waking up, going to work or going to school, or maybe sometimes you just don't have the energy to get up. And that's okay too. But making that little effort to reach out to somebody that when you talk to maybe makes you laugh for a minute or something. Simple things like that. They're little tips.
I often will say, I like, if I'm having like a really bad mental health time, I'll be like, I'm like depression anxiety excited at this time. So I'm like, I'm not real excited. I can't get like as excited, but I'm like finding the like little bits. I'm like, okay, like I'm just, it's depression excited. It's like, hey, like I know that I need to be excited about this. Like find the good in it, find the good in it. I'm like trying so hard. And so sometimes it's like, you're just trying to find, like, make the best of the situation that, you have. And even though those like can be really challenging times, and I totally agree, like that having like even a safe person at all has really like helped me really help be sort of like connected. I guess we have one question that's just come in, which says, what is your opinion on self-care and the pressures of always being online with work from home? And I guess I will totally say that I struggled with this, and I even had to make like how can we encourage employers to care more about our mental health? That's the question. And I totally agree, because I totally had to create boundaries myself. I worked from home before the pandemic, and then I did some work outside of my home. But basically, I just felt like once it became COVID, folks were trying to, like, everyone was online then, and everyone was using all the medias. So I had like Messenger, I had like Facebook Messenger with like work folks. I had like, an app with other work folks. I had like a bunch of things, and I had to delete a ton of that to like be like, I can't answer things like 24/7. So I totally feel that from this person. So yeah, Tess, do you have any suggestions on like, how do we deal with that pressure of always being online, and how can we encourage our employers to take care of our mental health?
Yeah, that's a really great question, and I like your response to Alyssa. I can also relate to that. I wish I had all of the answers, because I also struggled with that at first as well, because we were working at home for a little bit. I think setting up your own kind of personal boundaries is really important, and it's definitely not the easiest thing to do. If you're able to have, okay, I work from 8 to 5 or whatever your hours might be, trying to make it as strict as possible with that. I know Some people might have like one phone for everything. So kind of managing your own mind that, okay, if I get a message that's work related, I'm really, really going to try and stick to my boundaries and I'll answer it in the morning. That doesn't mean you're not seeing the message. So even if you're not responding, you're probably thinking about work. And I can also relate to that question. So when you're thinking about self-care and the pressure of always being online, taking that step away from being online. So yes, it is a time to be in a virtual world and to expand our knowledge with the virtual side of things, but it could also be a time to take a step back from that and to kind of get back to nature, kind of going for a walk outside and leaving the phone home, leaving the tablet home, and just kind of being really mindful of that for your own benefit. And in terms of how we can encourage employers to kind of consider mental health more, I think it's really important to have a conversation. We hope that our employers will be mindful that, yes, we are human and we can only work so much. And we're also struggling too. This is affecting everyone. But sometimes it's not always that easy. So opening up that conversation, letting your employers know that, I'm struggling, or maybe everybody is struggling, and having that conversation of what they might be able to do to help. I think employers might assume what they're doing is okay, but if they're not told, then they're not able to do some adjustments to suit that. So I think if you're comfortable with your employer having that conversation about, even maybe I need to really take my breaks. I know people working from home often forget that they have this much of a break. They have a lunch break, 15 minutes here. It's really important to kind of keep that schedule as well and say, nope, I'm stepping away from my laptop, my phone, and I'm going to take this break for myself. Because I think when you do that, it shows your employer that, this is important and this is how it was done in the workplace, and it needs to continue at home as well.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I think some of those boundary settings, Tess, like you said, are not always easy to do. But I don't know, a piece of advice that I got was like, if you don't try to set them early, then you're setting an expectation sometimes, and then that sometimes makes it even harder. And that's totally what I had done to myself, where like I created this expectation for some of my clients, that it was like, oh, you can just contact me like anytime, anyway, like here's all these things. And then I had created way too much access to my schedule and to my time. And then I was doing exactly what you said, not putting the phone down. If I got the message, I wasn't sticking true to that boundary. So I had to have like that open conversation with, my clients to be like, I can't do this. I can't, like, this is going to be my time. This is my work time. This is exactly the hours, like you said, that I was like, I work from these hours. I regularly take lunch between here. I might not answer an email in that hour, and just kind of like had to do that. But I agree, it's not always easy. And if you're finding, I guess, that your employer is not necessarily taking mental health seriously, even that tip that you gave earlier, Tess, around, or not necessarily tip, but that insight you gave around young people seeking help right now, because you can kind of use that shield in some ways of COVID-19 versus being like, I just need help. I think that that's a good way to even frame it, that it's like, you don't always have to frame it as like, I'm struggling, I need something. It's like, you can be like, hey, this is a reality, which it is a reality for everyone. And this is just some of the things. And, I'm just needing some time, needing to set these boundaries as a result. And I think that's a lot of, hopefully, reasonable employers will be able to see that that's like an important aspect. But if not, it's important to reach out for help, I think. Always, like, again, if you're feeling like overburdened or you can't deal with it. Yeah, I think this has been like a really great chat so far, Tess. I'm like super excited to have got to talk with you, and I feel like there's like lots of things that like we're getting to chat about youth mental health a lot lately, Tess and I. So it's been like very great to get to have this chat and like to talk about, I guess, some of the ways that COVID-19 has impacted, but also just like how can we kind of reach out for help or take care of ourselves. Do you have anything else that you'd really like to share? I know you do lots of work and you know, you're connected to the space so much. But do you have anything else you'd like to share, insights, thoughts?
Well, first, I just want to thank you because you made this a lot easier. I was nervous about this. So, you know, I get nervous. And I think, yeah, during this time, it's trial and error. We go through it and we see what works for us. And like you said, knowing that everyone is in the same kind of situation, not exactly the same, but overall with the pandemic, we're trying to navigate life, you know, with this added stressor. And reaching out is okay. Reaching out for help. That's one of the biggest things that I want to reiterate, that, you know, it's okay. It's okay to do that. And I know we've gotten so far with breaking the stigma, but I think it's important to continue talking about it, and you know, talking with our colleagues, with our employers, with everyone about it. So yeah,
That's such a great point. Thanks. I really enjoyed it too. And I just think, yeah, it's such a great point that, like, you know, we work in these spaces, and I just like reached out for help again recently. Like, I just got on new antidepressants, I got on new meds, I saw a new doctor. And like, even when I was saying to that doctor, I was like, oh, like, I work in youth mental health spaces and I talk about youth mental health every day. And I still found it like challenging to be like, oh, I need to talk about this like myself. So like, even people who are like in those spaces, like it's sometimes hard to know like when you should. But if you're feeling not okay, it's like, just do it, and hope that, you know, I didn't necessarily have the best experience when I reached out, but I got help and I got support. And, you know, I then had other caring people in my life, such as the folks from Access Open Minds. So it like helps, you know, to like have that little bit of a community, as you said before, you know, like, even if you have that community, even if everything's not great, you can find the good and the support system that you need. Okay, I'm gonna let you go. And if you just join, sorry, we are gonna end our live, but you'll be able to catch this on our IG TV. I'm going to post it there, assuming that technology allows me. And we'll also just kind of save this, and it'll probably be over on our Access Open Minds Facebook page and on our website. So you can stay tuned for that if you want to check out. And if you have any other questions, you can feel free to DM us here. We'll be happy to pass those along to, I'll be happy to pass them to Tess, and we can go from there. And hopefully we'll do another IG Live at another time. So thank you for joining. See you, everyone.
Thanks, Alyssa.
Thank you.